All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping everyone can hear me. Get a thumbs up from someone if you can hear me. Thank you. And it's my honor to host this today. This is the first discussion with a docent that I've done. My name is Sam Parrish, if you're not familiar, and I'm the education specialist here at the Holocaust Museum and Cohen Education Center down in Naples. And I guess I'm assuming pretty much all of you are in the area, or at least in the area seasonally. So that's where we are located. If you're not really familiar with the museum, just so you know, we are in our 21st year and going strong, and that is despite the current pandemic. In fact, we have an exhibit going right now through the end of December, and the exhibit is called Through Their Eyes, The Liberation of Concentration Camps. Now, what makes that exhibit extra special is, like just about everything we do, that it has connections to Southwest Florida. So the artifacts, the photographs, and a lot of the documentation has some connection through a survivor or through a liberator to Southwest Florida. So that exhibit is here. We are having people in. We've actually reduced the days that we're open even because it's been, let's face it, it's been pretty slow. So we reduced the days down to Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. But you're more than welcome to come in and check out that exhibit. And again, it'll be through December of 2020. Today's program is the Discussions with a Docent, and it's going to be led by Steve Brazina. Steve, I've known Steve for, well, how long have I been here? 8 years. So I've known Steve for 8 years, but he has been a docent here at the museum for much longer than that. He goes back to 2008 at the museum. I know from casual observation of me just moving through the museum and hearing him over the years that he's an extremely devoted and passionate docent. He really cares about the subject of the Holocaust and cares about teaching the subject as well. In addition to being a top-notch docent, Steve is also the program chair for Gen Shoah. The Gen Shoah here in Southwest Florida, you may probably know better than I, but it's very active and really does a great job, generally right before season starts, and then I think throughout the year, at least through the end of May anyway, and they do a fantastic job. Lots of movies, lots of book discussions, and so forth. So the agenda for today is Steve's going to do a presentation or an introduction, an overview of the film Unlikely Heroes. I hope everyone had a chance to watch it, and if you've seen it in the past, I hope you had the opportunity to see it again to refresh your memory. I know it was not maybe the easiest to find, as we were just talking about a little bit. After that, and we're going to have a PowerPoint that I'm going to turn on shortly, and it's not going to be a whole lot of tech. That's it, the PowerPoint, just so you have visuals. After Steve's interview or overview, introduction and overview, we're going to put you in breakout rooms, and I'm assuming a lot of you or many of you have done breakout rooms before. By the way, the number of participants has just gone up to 35, so we're rolling now. We're going to break you into breakout rooms. Probably thus far we do 6 or 7 breakout rooms, and we're hoping for 8. I sent questions out ahead of time. And I know that Ron is here, Ron Agrona, and he's got one of the questions. And I know that Richard's here, and he's got one of the questions as well. When you're in those breakout rooms, if there's going to be a glitch, that's where it's going to happen, and it will be my fault, not Steve's. So if you bear with me on the breakout room session part just a little bit, if there's not a person who has the question in advance, I'm going to try to pop in virtually, and I'll say what the question is, and then you guys can discuss it. We're going to have about 15 minutes to discuss the question, and then we're going to bring everybody back as one big group. When we bring everybody back, after the discussions, we're going to want to hear everyone talk, and so we're going to have each group elect a spokesman. And we've decided that the person of the 5 or 6 in there whose last name begins with a letter that's closest to Z is the spokesperson or spokesman. If you guys get in the virtual breakout room and you say, the heck with that, I'll do it, it's fine. Believe me, 5 people. Then you come back and you let us know who the spokesman is, and we'll go from there. The best way for us to communicate and to discuss is by clicking on the participants tab. If you've clicked on that, you can see the list of everyone who's here. If you look down at the bottom of the participants tab, you'll see some little icons, a yes and no, a fast or slower, and then a more. The more has little icons in it, one of which is a thumbs up. If you click that thumbs up, that'll let me know, and Steve as well as the co-host, that you have a question. And so that'll be the way that I kind of am able to say, oh, so-and-so has a question, and then that person will come on. And if we have issues with it, we'll adjust on the fly for sure. So we'll go from there. It's my honor to be part of this, and it's my pleasure to turn things over to Steve Brazina. And Steve, I'm going to put the PowerPoint on now.
Thank you, Sam. Happy New Year to everyone. By using that thumbs up, let's try it out. If you'll use that to indicate if you saw the film. Everybody can find that little thumbs up. And indicate how many saw the film. Can we see that, Sam?
Well, they're coming through. A couple of them so far have come through for sure. The Gronins raised their hand, for example.
I'm not finding the hand.
All right, I will. All right, so at the bottom of everyone's screen, there should be a thing that says participants. If you click on participants, it should throw a list up to your right. And then all the way at the bottom, you'll see some little icons. It says a yes, a no, towards the bottom of the page above where you would be able to mute. And it says more. And if you click on that, or if you hover over the more, so I see 5 likes now that are coming through. And then you just click on the thumbs up, and that'll come through. So I see Howard Kerner, thumbs up, Judith Lipnick, well, they're moving now, Fran Kroll, Eileen Lerner, Diane's iPhone, Carol, Linda's iPad, and so forth. So yes, it's looking like about half anyway, Steve, have seen the film.
Good, thank you for that. I actually watched the film myself probably about 4 or 5 times because I found it so fascinating and I didn't want to miss a thing. The first thing I'd like to mention is the introduction of the film. I don't know if any of you remember it. It was only 2 minutes long, but to me it was extremely powerful. Of course, it's Ben Kingsley speaking, and whoever wrote the introduction really hit the nail on the head about what this is all about. As a matter of fact, if I would try to do it in my tours, I could probably spend a half an hour and not do as an effective job as they've done in the 2 minutes. So I'd like to spend 2 minutes with this introduction, which to me was one of the most memorable parts of the film. People often ask, why did the Jews go like sheep to the slaughter? Sheep to the slaughter. How do they know what it was like crowded together in a way that even animals are not treated? Weakened by months of hardship and hunger, locked up in sealed wagons without food, without weapons, without friends. And even if one escaped the Nazis, who was there to welcome them? Who cared? Sheep to the slaughter. What do those who use the phrase know about honorable courage, about the brave partisans who risked their lives in the forest to battle the Germans and their collaborators, of the fearless individuals who defied the Nazis and helped thousands escape death? What do they know about reverence? Of the parents who would not desert their little ones, who stayed behind to embrace them and exchange glances with them one more time? About those who gave up their daily ration of food so that their father, their grandmother would live another day? What do they know of the people who refused to believe in the death of mankind, who lived in places like hell, organized schools, prayed, studied the Talmud, painted, composed, sang songs of today, of eternity and tomorrow, even when there was to be no tomorrow? Let's now, that to me sets the stage. Sam, let's go to the listing of the 7 individuals. Well, right, you can actually go back just a second for the 2 back. Okay, thank you, Sam. Just to make it clear to everybody, this film was a production of Mariah Films, which is the film division of the Wiesenthal. And some of their films have received Oscars, such as The Long Way Home that we discussed previously. The narrator, I guess they couldn't get much better than Ben Kingsley. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay.
Next. It's the stories of Jewish resistance and heroism. And as it explains in the second paragraph of the summary, when people think of Jewish resistance, they think of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Now, for example, in our museum, most of the emphasis is on non-Jewish rescuers, non-Jewish heroes. Most of the photos and stories are about non-Jewish heroes and rescuers. Well, what about the Jewish rescuers? Do we just believe that Jews went to their deaths? Again, like, I don't like that phrase, and I'm sure people part of this discussion today don't like it. I cringe every time I hear that, sheep to the slaughter. And yet, the truth is that after the Second World War, in places where Holocaust survivors went, they were looked down upon. I know as a fact that was the case in the United States, having spoken to Holocaust survivors, and it definitely was a fact in Israel, in Palestine. People just couldn't comprehend how could people let themselves be taken in railway cars and then marched into gas chambers. How could it be? What kind of odd people were these that allowed themselves to go to their death so easily? Well, it's not true. It's not true. There was resistance throughout the Holocaust. And there are 7 examples, wonderful examples here, because these are people who didn't have to do what they did, but they did it. And this is what we want to talk about. Let's go to the next screen. There are the 7 individuals. Hopefully to the people who saw the film, they'll see some familiar faces or names. What I'd like to ask, and you can raise your thumb again, I want to ask the group, those who saw the film, were there any of these particularly that you thought their story was impressive and memorable? I'd like you to select, by raising your thumb, any of these who their story stood out to you and why.
Okay, so I just unmuted Carol, whose thumb was up. Carol, do you want to jump in?
Anybody who would like to speak about any of these whose story you thought was particularly amazing?
I think Pinchas Rosenbaum was just amazing, having no idea that there were even people like that.
Certainly. Go ahead.
I mean, watching Hogan's Heroes as a young man growing up, which was a sacrilegious type of show, had no idea what Robert Clary had gone through, just knew as this actor in the show. And now I'm wondering if maybe my father knew something about this guy's background, because, I mean, I was really terrified of my father's reaction would be to us watching this TV show. And at first, you know, it was not a good reaction. But later on, he would just sit there laughing at the Germans with us. So I don't know if you know anything about this man's history. We never discussed it, but I had no idea about Robert Clary before this film.
Thank you, Richard. Belle?
The Orthodox woman, I can't see her name on here and I forgot.
Rebecca Sternbuch.
I mean, being a woman and what she did was unbelievable and had no fear. She was remarkable. Well, they all were, but she was really remarkable.
Yeah, and my feeling, I knew virtually all of these, but I don't think I remember anything about Pinchas. And so that's the one that impressed me because he just kept doing it. He kept reinventing himself through the whole thing, and he did it at 21 years of age.
Anyone else like to comment about any of these 7 individuals?
I've given talks about Rebecca Sternbuch, and she's particularly amazing because of the extent of her sacrifice, as well as underscoring an aspect of pekuach nefesh, this Jewish concept that even though she missed the bar mitzvah of her only son, that in fact in Jewish law, to save a life is far more important than any other custom or tradition or expectation. And she seemed completely determined and was completely determined to do everything that she did, and was not, I mean, the idea of going to speak with Himmler and then not speaking to her husband after he refused her the right to do that says so much about her determination.
Thank you so much, Howard. One thing I want to mention, because most people know me as a film aficionado, I did find a full-length feature film about Pinchas Rosenbaum. And you can watch it. I watched it online. I believe I had no problem getting it through one of the platforms. Walking with the Enemy. Walking with the Enemy. Walking with the Enemy. It's a full-length feature film. I thought it was well done. Maybe the critics wouldn't care for it, but I thought it was very well done. Of course, it's made into a film, so not everything is exactly as in the documentary, but pretty close. So those of you who were amazed by Pinchas Rosenbaum, which I definitely was, you can watch this film, Walking with the Enemy.
Are you
And
saying it's on Netflix or one of those?
yes, it's on one of those platforms.
Okay.
Because I did some research. I found out there was a film about him, and then I was determined to find it and to watch it.
Yes, it got very little attention publicly when it came out, but it's fairly close to the story. And of course, the fact that he was a wonderful chameleon who would dress himself up, even in Nazi uniforms if need be. You know, there was, again, nothing that he wouldn't do to save the people. And watching as with all the rescuers, on the razor's edge of just about to be discovered, just about, one moment from being revealed to be a fraud, he managed to ride that razor's edge all the way through to save so many people. And he was such an inspiration.
And what's interesting, we're going to get into this in a few minutes because we're going to go into our breakout rooms with the questions, basic questions, not questions yes or no, basic questions that you'll definitely want to discuss. And one of the things I think that is embedded in these questions is the fact that you always discover that these people who did amazing things never considered themselves heroes. Pinchas Rosenbaum, and I did quite a bit of research on him online, he never talked about it. He'd rather not talk about it. These people, for some reason, which I know we want to discuss, they feel like they have a duty and an obligation to do what they did, that they didn't do anything extraordinary. This is what they had to do. What's interesting, if you look at the other side, the perpetrators, and I've watched quite a few films about the Nuremberg trials and the aftermath, when the Nazi war criminals were questioned, why did they do these horrendous things? Oh, this was our duty. We had to do it. This was an obligation. We had no choice. They didn't mean they're going to be shot for not doing it, because historians have found out that those who refused to kill Jews were not immediately executed. They were, in most cases, assigned other assignments.
They were the real sheep.
Pardon me?
They were the real sheep.
Yeah, there you go. What a great point. Who were the sheep? Was it the Jews who were trapped? I think the other thing is that nobody likes to think of themselves as a trapped animal. You like to think you have freedom of action. You can do something. And the thought that the European Jews were trapped, they were depending on the governments of the countries they lived in to make a priority about saving the Jews. And we know from the United States that was not a war aim of the United States or President Roosevelt. The war aim was to win the war. So to whom was it a priority to save the Jews? The Jews. Sam, let's go ahead with some of the discussion questions so we can get everybody talking instead of me.
You're muted. Sam, you're muted.
How do I tell him he's muted?
Yeah,
Okay,
hold up a sign.
in the chat, try the chat.
That's what I'm doing.
When you're trying
You
to-
can unmute him.
You can, if he has,
The host can unmute him.
Yeah, there, he's on now.
I am, yeah, I'm creating, wow, six breakout rooms right now. And I'm gonna, like I said, when I was muted, I will move people around if those groups don't have someone who's already been assigned a question. So that'll take a moment or two, but if you just bear with me, we should get this rolling. So you're gonna get a message shortly that says, to join the breakout room, and then we'll go from there. So here we go with the rooms.
Breakout is bread and break down.
All right, so I'm opening those rooms up.
Here we have to join the breakout.
Okay.
Sam,
Yes, sir.
your email said I was in 4, but the thing
Yes,
says
you're actually showing up as not joined for some reason. Right now, I'm moving Richard Stein to 5, and he had the question. And then Stuart, you should be in 4. I just need to
4.
locate you on here.
the
Yeah, it
message
says you
said
haven't joined.
it says join breakout room 2, so I didn't join.
Okay, I'm gonna move you to, actually, if you're able to join it, and then I'm gonna move you to 4, please.
Okay.
There we go, awesome. Thank you, Stuart. Okay, so 1 is good, 4 is good, 6 is not good. Richard Stein, you're in 5. So is Ida on. Ida is on. Ida, I'm gonna move to room 3. So rooms 1, 3, 4, and 5 have a person with a question. Now I'm working on room 2. Becky Cornacchia was going to be in there. I don't see her on the list, so I will give you the question. And then group 6 is Arnold, if I can find Arnold. Wow. Okay. All right, I just saw Jane. Jane, I'm going to put you in 6. All right, so Steve, if you can hear me, I'm gonna bring question 2 to group 2, to breakout room 2, and then question 6 to breakout room 6. And if you're able to jump into the to the groups and check them out, that would be helpful. Wow, this thing is breaking down badly.
This one was.
All right, hello everybody. I've got a question. Becky Cornacchia was going to be the one asking this question. I don't see her on the list. My computer is breaking down. So the question is, when we talk about rescuers, why do we usually refer to non-Jewish heroes? So I'll say it again, and then you guys can discuss. When we talk about rescuers, why do we usually refer to non-Jewish heroes? And hi, Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Good to see you.
You as well. So if you folks want to discuss that question about referring to non-Jewish heroes, that would work, and then we'll check back in with you in a few.
Okay. Was there anybody specifically in the movie who was non-Jewish? Because I just saw it once and real quick.
I don't think so. Dick or
So
Brandeis.
these are all Jewish people. That's what I thought.
Jewish. Yeah.
Okay.
Hard to think that this was such a long time ago that they made this film and we're first seeing it now.
Well, I think it's interesting that IMDb finally picked it up and is getting it out there.
Okay. Here's the
Let me just-
leader.
If I can just break in really quickly for group 6, because group 6 didn't have someone with the question ahead of time. This is actually a really good, a neat question too. It is, does the film serve to make the individuals larger than life heroes? So again, does the film serve to make the individuals larger than life heroes? So if you can focus on that and maybe elect a spokesperson. And again, we said if the person whose last name begins closest to the letter Z can be the spokesperson, but there's probably 4 of you in there, 3 or 4. So you can fight it out if you'd like. And I'm going to jump out of here and see what's going on in the other rooms.
Okay, Jane, it looks like you're our
Wow. Worst time.
There's instinctual, there's training. You know, the mother going after the baby is instinctual. There's the fireman who jumps into the building, and there's the average guy walking down the block too.
But there definitely is something about some people. I think that's what that program that we saw a couple of weeks ago was talking about. Something about the individual. They talked about religious connection, belief in God.
It's just something within yourself, I think, that you have. And how you got it might have been your background, might have been heredity, might have been circumstance of how your life has progressed. But I think just some people have more of that tendency to be giving and not always think of themselves. Sort of like the mask and no mask kind of controversy like we have now.
Now here was this Rekha Starbuch, who we talked about, who's in the film. She
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Ida.
Hi, sorry, it took longer than I thought.
Oh, no, it's good to see you.
I couldn't get on with my iPad because there was no internet.
Oh, believe me, I hear you. My computer's just about ready to die, and this is about the worst timing possible. Do you want to join the group, group 3? They're discussing a question, and it's about,
Now, I don't know that person. Anybody discussing Friedel Dicker Brandeis? She was my favorite. I tried to get on, but I knew you weren't going to hear me in the.
right now they're discussing general questions about these people and people like them so it's real generalized yet right now. When we first came on, people talked about who stood out the most. So maybe when we come back, you can talk about her there. I agree. She's a neat woman, and her story's one of the more heartbreaking of them, to be honest.
Yes.
You know, Pincus survives, and he's a character, and Robert Clary survives and ends up on Hogan's Heroes. But Friedel, you know, her end is awful.
Yes, with those children, it's terrible.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's horrible. All right, so I can put you into room 3 if you'd like for a discussion.
Okay.
They're talking about Leon Kahn and how
I don't really know him.
Oh, okay. Well, you can go to a different one if you want.
Okay.
How about room 6 is talking about asking the question, does the film make these heroes larger than life?
Okay.
Kind of a cool one. All right, so here you go to room number 6. Wow. This. Computer may not make it.
And how to go about starting a resistance. I mean, that's why the Warsaw Ghetto book, what was it, Mila 18, was so powerful. Because of it was the first kind of revolt against the Nazis, kind of harking back to Masada, you know, and Jews fighting. But the European Jews were not really people
Right.
of
You're
fight.
right about that.
You know, most people I don't even know how to hold a gun.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
My son does because he has a job where he's required to do that, but most people don't. You know, I taught riflery at camp, so I guess I could hold a rifle. But back then, they didn't. And so I think they were intellectuals, they were scholars.
Know what you would do in such a situation.
Right.
And And for an average family who's trying to survive day by day with little children, what are they going to do to resist? What are they going to do? They need to find another potato to share with the children.
Just to survive in the ghetto was resistance every day.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we have a guest, Sam.
Hi, Stuart. How you doing?
Good.
Just dropping in. Wanted to hear what you guys were up to.
Yeah, we were just talking about the question we had, in terms of the acts of resistance rare. We don't think they were all that rare. I think everyone who survived is the ultimate resistor. Survival was, each day was resistance, just struggling to maintain yourself in the ghettos.
Or on the death march.
Or in the death marches. That is resistance. And all the teachers.
I think, can you hear me? I think that there were probably hundreds, maybe thousands more resistors who were killed because they resisted. And we will never know their stories.
I agree.
Yeah, when we work with student groups, and Stuart knows this, we do talk about people even in the camps and holding, for example, like Friedel Dicker Brandeis doing underground. Oh, hi, Carol. Doing underground art projects. That's resistance, right? And then people holding services, and you guys may have already discussed this, but anyway, holding services, that's resistance as well. The Ringelblum milk can idea of documentation, that's resistance as well. And, Brandeis, of course, doesn't survive, and her story, I think, is just one of the more heartbreaking ones in this movie. But she darn well was a resistor, and we know her story because she was a famous painter and because of the artifacts that survived her death. But I agree with, I'm sorry, my computer is so messed up, but it looks like Beth. I agree with you. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands possibly of people who resisted that we'll never know their stories. So totally agree with that.
Exactly.
And I think that perhaps her story survived because of the artwork of the children that survived.
Totally agree. So what do you guys think the seventh question that we didn't get to because we only have 6 groups, but was, what is the ultimate message of the film? Is it that good can survive when confronted with the most destructive forces? Or just in general, what is the ultimate message of the film?
That the human spirit can't be broken, no matter how hard.
I think it's just teaching people the stories, letting them hear them that have never heard these stories before.
Yeah, some of them are pretty well known. I think the Friedel Dicker Brandeis and Robert Clary and Pincus Rosenbaum, I think, are well-known ones. But the Willie Pearl, and when we think about the crematoria, the Auschwitz crematoria being blown up, the name that comes to my mind is that Rosa Rabata. Yeah. But this person just, I guess, ended up adopting less fame for it, or less notoriety for it. So it's good to see those people as well.
I saw an exhibit on this particular thing, the blowing up of the crematorium. I think it was in the New York Museum of Jewish History. I think it was that museum, if I'm not mistaken, where they had a little exhibit about her, Rosa, and this whole complot about smuggling out the gunpowder in their underwear. That was the first time I heard about it, so I was pleased to see it was included in the movie.
All right, I'm gonna go check in with Steve, find him in his room, So I will see you guys shortly.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bodies.
I think you're right, because if you think of the Holocaust as, well, as Winston Churchill described it, the greatest crime in the history of mankind, how could there be heroes among the victims? So it shows you that even in the worst of circumstances, there's some good that can come out of it. One of the, I'm surprised Sam hasn't interrupted us yet, but that's good. One of the other questions was, why were such acts of resistance so rare during the Holocaust? Because one of the authorities who speaks in the film about one of the heroes, he said, he makes a point of it, and he says, this was extremely rare. Why do you think it was so rare?
Well, I don't have an exact.
Holocaust. Many of them were the ones who were in eastern Poland that was occupied by the Soviet Union in 1939. And like my friend's father, when the Soviet Union took over eastern Poland, after the Nazis took over the rest of Poland, they regarded Jews as enemies of the people and shipped them off to Siberia, which saved their lives.
Hi, Steve, sorry to interrupt. I was getting ready to bring everybody back. You ready?
Yeah.
All righty, I'm gonna bring everybody back then.
some people must not know that they need to exit out of the breakout rooms.
Yeah, it's going to happen automatically. It just happened automatically, so
Good.
everybody should be coming back. I see 28 participants and they're still rolling back in. Now, do you want me to share the screen again, Steve?
That's good.
All righty. Where are we?
I like that with the juxtaposed pictures of those individuals that the film talks about.
Yes, yeah, they're neat pictures. I kind of wanted to get Robert Clary. These three gentlemen are facing the same direction, so I kind of wanted to make it symmetrical. But you know, there's a great picture of Friedel Dicker Brandeis too. Most of them, she looks so serious and kind of almost severe. And this one, she just looks really happy.
What does Ida have there? A book about Friedel? Yes, some of the artwork on. You're muted, Ida.
I love this book. I just
Is
think
that I Never Saw Another Butterfly?
this is called Fireflies in the Dark, the story of Friedel Dicker Brandeis and the children of Terezin. It's just beautiful. And she's amazing, like all these people are. It's just amazing.
That's at the museum, Ida?
That one's my copy. I don't know if there's one at the museum.
Okay. I never knew about her. Did they ever find any of her artwork? Or
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They
yes.
did.
Yes.
There
And
was
the
a whole
children.
suitcase of it that was found.
Right.
Really? Oh, did they bury things? Is
Yeah,
that how?
in Thracian stock, they found the whole,
Oh,
like maybe a suitcase with a lot of the art.
wow.
Steve, our group has a question for you.
Yes.
The film that we're showing January 12th at the library, Blessed is the Match, for people who are uncomfortable going or will not be in Naples, would it be possible to do that online after the 12th?
I can try to see if I can get access to it.
Okay,
I'll
that's
make a note.
Yeah, I told them I'd ask you. That's a request because that's an amazing. We're talking about heroes, and talk about Hannah Senish as a heroine, unbelievable.
That's actually a very good idea. I'm making a note.
Good, thank you, Steve.
Should we start reporting back?
I think so, Steve. And if we can just go in order. So group one, if you recall the group you were in, that was led by the Agronins. If you guys want to come back and start the group-wide discussion off, we appreciate it.
Okay, didn't you say that, you said that the person with the name closest to Z?
Yes. But the group was led by
A is
Agronins,
close
so whoever
to Z.
the name closest to Z can talk.
Yeah,
Like I said, you can
that's
fight it out, you guys.
I think I think you're supposed to talk.
Where's
We have to
Nan?
get the whole group. Yeah, Nan.
Oh, yeah, that'd be Nan.
Nan.
Where's?
We'll have to get the whole group.
Nan's on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, where's
Unmute Nan.
Nan?
Nan.
There we
unmute.
go. There we go. Okay. First of all, let me just say we had a particularly good group, I thought. Some of us knew quite a bit about the Holocaust and some of us were still learning. And I think we had good exchanges. And we were asked, why did the Jews go like sheep to a slaughter? And I think most of us shudder when we hear that. But we could think of a number of reasons. One was that some people were led to believe that they were going
there to work, and they were unemployed as a result of all of the race laws that had occurred before that, before they took them to the concentration camps. And some were overwhelmed because it was so unbelievable what was happening. Others were busy trying to protect their children, and that was their first priority, not fighting. They didn't have weapons, and to some it wasn't their nature or background to be fighters. They didn't have that upbringing. They hadn't been soldiers. Then the second question we were asked is, why were some of the survivors looked down on by both people in Israel when they were brought to Israel, and also by Americans, both Jews and non-Jews. And in Israel, I think someone, I don't remember who, very well said that many of the Israelis who were there had come in the 20s and 30s. They had had enough foresight to realize that they needed to get away from Europe, and they resented the fact that these people who were bedraggled and damaged and didn't know the language weren't that didn't have that foresight, and now we're expecting the Israelis to take care of them. But by and large, I think the feeling was that the Israelis were there to help, in very important ways. In America, they certainly stood out because many of them, were very clearly Jewish and not assimilated at all at that point. And they were psychologically damaged as well as physically. And they were difficult people and difficult to get along with, difficult to help. And I think that's pretty much what we agreed on. Does anybody think of anything else that I didn't remember?
Good job.
You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I think the comment, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but it pertains to what Nan was just talking about. The comment from somebody in our group really hit the nail on the head, I thought. And they said, the sheep were not the Jews. It was the Nazis who were the sheep.
Oh,
Yes,
boy.
yes.
They were the ones following orders with no morality, like an automaton.
Wow.
I think it
It's
would
a
be
good
good
point.
to,
Comment.
Yeah, you could bring that up sometime as who were the sheep?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good
But-
question.
That was a good comment.
Yeah, like
Great insight.
If I can say something also, for the Jews in the US, you also had during the war a very strong pro-Nazi
Mhm.
groups.
Right.
And some of the Jews probably did not, those established did not want to upset what they considered an uneasy balance. I mean, during the war, you did have people in the Midwest who definitely wore brown shirts and had parades and were very well also financed.
Who was the pilot who,
Lindbergh?
Lindbergh, right?
Yeah,
no,
Lindbergh.
during
Charles Lindbergh.
Charles Lindbergh, he was a Nazi for
Oh.
sure.
he was a sympathizer, yes, and he was
Sympathizer, yes.
anti-Semitic, yes.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, so was Ford.
Yep.
And so were many others. And in Madison Square Garden, I'm sure many of you have seen the video of the huge Nazi rally that took place in the center of New York City
Right.
in 32, 33. So there were many, many pro-Nazis and sympathizers in the United States before Hitler.
They are here now.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, they are here now.
Other groups that want to report back, Sam?
Well, sure, let's go in order. How about group 2?
Can you refresh our memory who was in group 2?
I was in group 2.
I was in group 2.
Renee did all the talking, so she gave us she talked about her when she was a young girl and lived with a French family, and they protected her and all that, and the things that they did to help her out, and that was major. That was the major emphasis of our group.
So did you look into at all the question when we talk about rescuers, why do we seem to tend to refer to non-Jewish heroes? Or do you want to take that spontaneously?
I don't know, it took us a little bit to think of examples, et cetera. And then of course, Renee said that the family who took her in were obviously heroes in her background. And I kind of made a comment that you take the non-Jewish rescuers and put them in 2 groups, the one that are affiliated with the Allied military or whatever, and the people who are just acting on their own. Is something came upon them in their personal life and they jumped in to help somebody out.
I think there's also a history here because Yad Vashem only recognizes non-Jewish righteous. The Jews who behaved as some of these stories from the movie, they would not qualify for the Yad Vashem's
guidelines.
Yes, exactly.
Can anybody say why that is? Why only non-Jews? Why was that done?
That was a decision of Yad Vashem. I don't know enough about it, but even
The
amongst the
different category-
non-Jews.
The medal from
different
Yad
category
Vashem
of the
says-
righteous among the nations.
Yes. And
that
that's
one
the
Gentile
issue.
who saves a Jew saves the world.
Yeah.
But the even amongst the non-Jews who helped Jews during the Holocaust, if they received any kind of compensation, whether money or something in kind, they don't qualify either.
Well, I
So-
personally don't know how much money, if any, my parents gave to the family who took care of me, since I was left there close to the age of 8, and my parents were taken when I was around 9. And my aunt and uncle who lived in the area did not have much money, and they lived on trade that they did with the farmers. But to be accepted by Yad Vashem, there's a whole form. There are forms to be filled out. There are witnesses' stories, and each person of the family, in my case, the parents who took me in were already gone, but each person had to be clearly vetted by the local authorities. It is not that easy to be vetted and accepted by Yad Vashem. I was told by Yad Vashem in New York that it would take 2 years. And at the time, there were 3 of the 6 children. There were 3 still living. And actually, I was lucky because the family was accepted 13 months later, but there were only 2 children surviving.
We were in Odessa maybe 10, 15 years ago, and we went with a mission from Baltimore. I think it was the Federation, the Associated, it's called. So we were taken to homes of the righteous Gentiles, and they talked to us about what they had done for the Jews. So they are taken care of. They lived in very poor accommodations, but they were being taken care of and sent money, and I imagine given food. Then they had soup kitchens for all these people. So
one of the things that keeps coming up over and over again, and maybe another way to look at it, is that comparatively, there were so few who helped the Jews. There really, it's a very painful subject, but there were so few, and I think for Holocaust education, we're trying, whether it's Yad Vashem or our museum, we're trying to show something positive, because it's a subject that could be very disturbing and continuously disturbing. And we're trying to show some universal truths and some positive things about human nature. But if you think about it, you could almost divide history before the Holocaust and after the Holocaust, because people wouldn't believe that human beings could do these things to other human beings. I still don't believe it. I give tours, I've studied it. I cannot, something inside of me will not believe that human beings can do this to other human beings. Taking a little baby, throwing it up in the air and shooting it. I mean, these are things that are beyond the pale. But we want to have something positive to talk about.
Steve, if I can jump in, agreed. We want to inspire, especially, so we're talking like an 8th grade group, for example. We want them to leave inspired as opposed to demoralized. And one of the ways to do it is to give them heroes. We mentioned the Jewish partisans as well, so we're trying not to necessarily parse it like that. And we want them to leave thinking that these aren't superheroes, which I know is one of the questions about the film making them larger than life. We want a kid who lives in somewhere in Naples to look and say, I could kind of do that same thing if I had to. Hopefully I don't have to, but if I did, I could react the same way. So, there's that for what we do in the school group tours.
If I could just put in a couple of comments. We brought, I don't know if you're familiar with the Holocaust by Bullets and the Yachad Emunam organization. We brought the exhibit out here to Phoenix, and we had to stop it because of the corona, but they have treated the entire subject as a crime scene, and they went and identified over 2,000 sites where Jews were murdered by bullets in their own towns in broad daylight. And they have interviewed eyewitnesses, obviously 60 years later, 70 years later. And so these eyewitnesses were young children, and they remember very, very clearly watching the murder of the Jews and having them thrown into the pits. And the question to them was, have you ever told anybody this story? And they said no. Under the Soviets, they were afraid to talk about it. And even now, some of them were afraid to talk about it because they're afraid of their neighbors. And this was the main issue at the time. The neighbors knew the people, they knew their names. These witnesses listed the names of their classmates, listed the names of the butcher, listed the names of the milkman. They knew them personally, and they were very, very upset in telling the story. And the main issue that they could not overcome was not the fear of the Nazis, it was the fear of their neighbors. That was a main factor. So, and in Eastern Europe, most of the Jews in Eastern Europe were killed by bullets. 2 million.
And collaborators. I think the point is, when they were afraid of their neighbors, so many were collaborators that participated. If I remember in Father Desbois' book, I mentioned this on my tours. He said that one of the people he interviewed about the executions, when they took the Jews out, made them dig a ditch and shot them into the ditch, he asked him what he remembers about it, and he said it was a carnival atmosphere. Think of that. Think of that. That's mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing, that the locals and the Nazis thought of it as a carnival.
Of course, Steve, that's kind of the atmosphere when they lynched blacks. Unfortunately, there's too much of that in the history of the world, where people find something in themselves as long as they can be better than someone.
You look at those pictures, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
People standing around and watching, whether it's lynchings in the South, whether it's during the Holocaust, they're smiling, they're laughing. Something about human nature is very, very, very scary.
I don't think we can find anything worth uplifting like you want to do. I just don't see how we can do it. For these kids to come out of it.
It's a real, I think Sam will agree with me, it's very challenging. It's very, very challenging to try to have people, because the more detail we go into, the more they see what evil human beings can do.
So we have to look at it as evil rather than, I don't know what we're going to get out of it that would be put a smile on your face, you know what I mean? Or to be a strong person and help. I know what you want to do, but I don't know how you're going to do it.
What scares me is the fact that you have all these panels that ask questions about the Holocaust and the results of people saying they've never heard about it. If it's one thing that there is so much written about, and we have the proof, because the Nazis kept such strict records, and people still in this day and age, a certain age group, say they have never heard of it. And their school, I mean, it's taught in the US, maybe not, it's taught in France, it's taught in Germany, and the Memorial de la Shoah in Paris has outreach programs. Like France is a small country, but I was there at the museum when I saw school groups, in fact, come and
what is the new act?
So they do have, and it scares me that people are saying they never heard of it.
Well, the two things that are scary, one is that they don't know about it, so that's ignorance. But then there are those who are still denying. Or distorting. That's the new thing in Eastern Europe, is Holocaust distortion.
Yeah.
And that's taking place now in Eastern Europe. So those are all concerning. And
Absolutely.
You're in Florida. I don't know, is Holocaust education mandated in Florida?
Well, now it's going to be
mandated or recommended?
Yeah, Hadassah just put through a new, convinced the government to put through a new law that, and I can't think of the name of it,
The Florida mandate is almost 30 years old.
Right. I thought it was obligatory.
No.
There's a big difference. We're involved here in the legislation.
Florida.
Well, now there's going to be a Holocaust Act where the teachers, where they, in the schools, they have to teach the Holocaust.
Wait a
that's
second.
through
Guys,
Hadassah.
can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In Florida, quite a while, it required part of the
Hear you now.
must teach the Holocaust.
Somebody's cutting out, I think.
Yeah, you're coming in and out.
There
But
are only
Florida
14.
It has been
14.
required in Florida.
There are only 14 states in the United States that require, mandate, and it's the verb is require, Holocaust education. We're working on that now in Arizona, and but in the entire United States, there are only 14 states that mandate it. The others might have recommended. You have to watch the verbiage.
I
It's
think
recommended.
Florida's mandate is close to 30 years old,
Yeah,
but
one
it
of the
didn't have a
first-
curriculum that went with it. And I met someone at our Holocaust museum over here on the East Coast who had come with his son, and the son had been taught Holocaust in somewhere in Palm Beach County, and Jews were not mentioned as part of the story. So
Can I just jump in for a
supposedly,
second?
what they're trying to do, they're waiting till next year because of everything else going on for the national one, that they will set up more of a curriculum that has to be taught, not just you have to talk about the Holocaust.
Sam, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, the mandate has been
in
it's been
Collier
around.
County,
The mandate has been around for, again, 30-something years or so in Florida.
Almost 30.
But if you look at the verbiage of it, it's very vague. And so it's not surprising that a person in Palm Beach County, just one example in Palm Beach County, might not have even heard the word Jew mentioned during it, because it's really about K through 12. And the language that's used referring to K through 12 does not say K 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 12th grade. It just says K through 12. So in theory, a teacher could say, well, they heard about it in kindergarten, therefore they don't need to learn it now. Now, of course, that's absurd, but that's why the mandate, as great as it is to be a requirement, is also vague as heck. And then Renee Baduch, what you were talking about the surveys that came up and how disappointing they are, that 2/3 of a group surveyed couldn't come up with the number, that 11 or 12 million, that number. The good news is that there was another survey that was done by the group Echoes and Reflections. And one of the things that they found was that students who heard a Holocaust survivor presentation had a completely different sense of background, of knowledge, and of empathy. So that's why I push, not surprisingly, I don't think it's that great of a thing. I think it's the best thing we do is to have survivor talks, ideally live, but this year maybe via Zoom and WebEx and so forth. Anyway, my thoughts.
We're
Well,
running
I
out of
did
survivors,
a
so they're using a lot
presentation
of
a few years-
second generation new also.
I did a presentation at a history class at FSW a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. And I was at the doctor's office last year, and one of the girls said to me, I remember you. I was in that class. And I thought, because she said my name, and I couldn't, I looked at a young girl in her early 20s, and I'm thinking, I don't know her. And she knew my name, and she told me where she met me the year before at one of Sarah's classes. So, it does work. But I also remember when Amy did teacher conferences or teacher work week to teach the teachers how to teach the Holocaust. And I forget where she did that, but I remember years ago, doing there was a middle school in Bonita, and I went and I did my presentation, and the teacher was just amazing. The kids were amazing, what they had learned. They had an open house, and they all made things, dioramas, different things. And this teacher was just absolutely marvelous, and so were her kids. Okay, they were the special kids. They were more. And then, and I also met at the time the director or principal of the school. A few years later, the principal changed and decided that this particular teacher was spending too much time on the Holocaust. And that teacher decided that she left the school. So it, you know, it all depends also how the school is run and how the individual teachers teach.
Yeah, we found that to be the case absolutely across the board. It varies by teacher, it varies by school. Steve, go on to group 4 and their question. As we're getting towards the end of our time available here, group 4 had the question, why were such acts of resistance so rare? Did we discuss that as a group?
Yeah, we did, and we had a good discussion, and we took the opposite view that resistance wasn't rare, but in fact occurred daily. For all those who survived the Holocaust, that was the ultimate resistance. That's what my parents always said. That was the ultimate goal, the ultimate resistance. For you to survive in a ghetto daily, starving to death, was the ultimate resistance. Third of all, in the film, we saw a teacher. This occurred in all the ghettos. There was actually attempts at culture in the ghettos. There was education in the ghettos. There were teachers in the ghettos trying to teach the students. So we don't know how many thousands and thousands of stories we don't have because they perished and their stories perished with them. So we do have the luxury of knowing some of the stories, but most of the stories were buried and long forgotten and are now forgotten and unknown because they died in the ghettos or died in the concentration camps or died in an extermination camp. People cling to their culture till the very last breath. As they went into the gas chambers, they reaffirmed their Jewish faith by chanting the Shema. Many people did, because that was resistance, not giving up their culture, their heritage, their religion. So we took the view that it wasn't rare, but it was daily and occurred everywhere.
Thanks, Stuart.
May I say something? May I say something?
Sure. Yes.
Beth, in group 4, I just want to say that without doubt, in Collier County, Florida, it is a required part of 7th grade, of the 7th grade curriculum. And in fact, after Kickajou Day, I started Stand Up for Justice, which I think some of you know about. Educators are get grants because of the work that they have done. We're now, I think, on our 11th or 12th year of doing that. It is amazing, and you can find out about it from the Jewish Federation.
Thank you all. Richard Stein, Group 5. You guys discussed the idea of the title "Unlikely Heroes." Was it a redundancy having the word "unlikely" and "hero" in it? If Richard is here and/or anyone from Group 5, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, the group was Marilyn, Lorraine, Stephen, and myself. Stephen has a Z in his name, but I'm closest to Z, last name. Steve made the point, he read one of the critics who said the title made no sense to the critic. So I'll just leave it at that. We said unlikely means something inside special. it's being in the right place, the right time, but also how do you react in that situation? And basically, you need to have confidence and be able to take a risk. And that was our conversation in a nutshell. Anybody want to jump in from our group?
All right, then thank you, Richard. Let's finish up group 6. Group 6 discuss again the idea of, did the film make the heroes actually larger than life?
Well, I was asked to be the spokesperson, and it's interesting why you were concerned that we all thought that they were heroic. And I thought they were larger than life, but I understand why it's important that we maybe tone it down for the young people that are watching it. And when we introduce these people that were so involved in saving lives and putting their own lives on the line, that when we introduce it to them, we've got to be very careful in how we introduce it to them. And because they know they can never be Superman, but they know that if their friend is doing something positive, they might want to do it because their friend is doing it. So they have to be the average person that they could relate to. And, you know, I did see these people as being examples of other people that have probably done a lot of what they did. The partisans, we showed an example of a partisan, and there were many men and women that were partaking in these things. Music, I've heard about music being played and people singing and people playing instruments. And I'm sure that was reflective of a lot of people that did those types of things. And they highlighted these people. And I guess I look at every single one of those, whether they were in the movie or not, as superheroes. But we have to think of it very differently when we discuss it with the children. Another thing, there are some people that have not watched the movie, and it is on Amazon Prime.
It is.
And it might be a little bit difficult getting into it from the link that was sent, which is at no cost, but Amazon, I believe, is at $2.99. And it is definitely worth watching, even though we've discussed it. To meet these people individually and hear their stories is very moving, and things that I had not been aware of. And I thought the footage that was shown was I've never seen before, and was quite excellent. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Can I add something that while we've been talking, that it occurred to me, there were 7 people in this movie, but they were different in that 2 of them were actually out front, very public, very exposed in what they were doing day in and day out, whereas the others were sort of more secretive. And I wondered sort of if those particular 2 weren't a little larger in life than the others. I mean, they were there. I mean, everybody, they were hiding right there in the public, or they weren't even hiding. And I just thought that made them a little special.
That's a really good comment. Judith, one of the questions, question 8 that Steve put together kind of fits in with that, talking about Pinchas Rosenbaum, and Steve's question, does the film suggest a complex and infinitely more tragic perspective on the protagonist's heroism? Not only was it dangerous, it was irrational. And so that's interesting that the 2 who were out front, Pinchas was, I mean, he was a character. He was out in your face with that. And the question that Steve had was not only was it dangerous, but was it irrational?
He's not who I was thinking about, actually.
Okay.
I was thinking about Willie Pearl, who was having to go and find people to help him. He had to expose himself. And I can't think of her name, the rabbi's wife. I mean, those people were out there in public. They were not hiding. Pinchas was hiding.
I do think that the characteristic of risk-taking is very important to this kind of discussion. And I think we can bring back to children when they can try to think about when they have taken a risk. It might not have been a risk for someone else, but they might have been taken a risk in their own life, either for their family or for themselves. And that might be a way to try and help children understand it a little bit. That the concept of risk taking and what it means.
One other thing I'd like to mention, Sam, before we tie things up, and that is that these people, most of them were very self-confident people.
Risk takers.
And risk takers.
Yes.
And we do know that not everybody reacts to fear the same way. Some people don't have the same fear level as other people. And certainly these ones who were out there exemplified that. And one thing that you might find interesting, any of these who you found particularly fascinating, if you Google, if you do a search, you're going to learn some amazing things about them after the Holocaust. They didn't stop doing what they were doing. They were smuggling Jews into Palestine. I mean, they were doing all kinds of, Willie was out there for Soviet Jewry. He wound up living in Washington. And he was one of the leaders of the Free the Soviet Jews. So I encourage you, if you found any of them particularly interesting, and Pinchas, you can watch that film, which I think you'll really enjoy. It's very, very well done and follows the story pretty well.
So Steve, do you have any final thoughts to wrap things up? Or was that your final thoughts?
Well, I guess all of us have our own take on it. What do we take away from it? From this film and the study of the Holocaust? To me, the word that sticks out in my mind is hope. H-O-P-E. People can't live without hope. We know how evil human beings can be, but we've got to have hope. Number one, that we're aware that this can happen, which some people mentioned that at the time, the Jews couldn't fathom. And I think the historians pretty well bear that out, that people would not believe this could happen. When they were confronted with the facts of the Holocaust, this went all the way up to Roosevelt and Justice Frankfurter. When they were confronted with the facts of the Holocaust, they said they didn't believe it. Right. Impossible. We know today, yes, human beings can do this. Maybe that gives us some hope for being vigilant. And the other thing, which maybe not everybody here agrees with, my personal takeaway, is that I think Jews have to be able to defend themselves. I don't think we can always be relying on other people to have our interests at heart and to defend us. We have to be able to defend ourselves. That's the takeaway I get. I don't know. I guess I could be a whole nother scenario. I could be a whole other discussion.
I was just going to say to you, do you mean guns or what do you mean?
Whatever we need to
whatever
do.
It takes.
Whatever it takes to defend ourselves.
Oh, dear.
We have a lot of neighbors here running guns to Israel in the 1940s.
Otherwise, we are citizens of various countries. We know that in the case of Germany, your citizenship can be taken away legally. That's what was done in Germany. They took the citizenship away from the Jews. They became subjects. And really, if you think of it, who do you look to defend you? Physically, your safety, your government. Think of it. You are looking to your government. It's their responsibility to defend you. Now, how has the history of the Jews been over the centuries with governments defending them?
Not too good.
Ida?
I want to thank Steve for this film because we decided last year before the pandemic, our theme for this year was going to be heroes, heroines, and helpers. So this is just one in the series. If someone isn't getting the Jen Shoah newsletter, you can email the museum or Jen Shoah Southwest Florida, and you can get the information for the rest of the series, because there are just so many more people that in our group we talked about that we're just not aware of. And these stories are all so fascinating. And I think every time that you tell one of these stories, it's a really positive thing of the heroes. So I did want to mention that.
Thank you, Ida.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
This was
thank
a
you.
wonderful group. And I appreciate everybody's input. I hope you like this format as well as I do, because I think it's a much better format than just someone presenting a PowerPoint presentation and you're listening in or taking notes. I like everybody's involvement.
Agreed. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Sorry about the technical glitches, and I'm getting a new computer shortly, so I can't even see this one. But anyway, great discussion. October 1st, we've got a discussion with a docent. It's Jan Larson discussing Holocaust literature. So it'll be fiction, nonfiction, and children's literature. That runs from 2 to 3 p.m., I believe, and we'll try and keep it 3 p.m. because we went 9 minutes over on this one. Apologies on that. And this is recorded, so for some reason you want a copy of it, we can get it to you, probably via Dropbox, since I'm assuming it's going to be an enormous file. With that, I want to thank you guys. And
we'll see you February 24th for the rest of the people. Renee's going to do a program for us.
Very cool.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't know what I'm going to
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Thank you, guys.
do. Okay.
Happy
Ida.
Yom
Bye, everybody.
Kippur.
Yes.
Happy Yom
You
Kippur.
too. Okay. All right.